Ever walked away from a conversation and thought, "Why didn't I say that better?" Or felt like no one truly understood what you were trying to say? You're not alone. In a world full of noise, real communication has become a lost art. But the truth I show you speak, listen, and connect shapes everything: your relationships, your career, your confidence. This audiobook isn't about fancy words or public speaking tricks. It's about learning how to be heard, understood, and respected in any situation. Whether you're shy, misunderstood, or just want to build stronger connections, you're about to discover simple, practical steps that can transform how you communicate and how the world responds to you. Welcome to How to Improve Your Communication Skills, your ultimate guide to speaking with confidence, listening with empathy, and mastering the art of conversation. Why communication is your most valuable skill. Communication is your most valuable skill because it's the bridge between your thoughts and the world. It's how you influence, connect, lead, negotiate, inspire, and resolve. No matter your goal, whether personal, professional, or spiritual, your ability to clearly express your ideas, listen deeply to others, and adapt your message is what determines your impact. You may have talent, intelligence, creativity, or vision, but if you can't communicate effectively, those gifts stay locked inside you, unable to reach their potential. Everything you want in life: better relationships, greater career success, more peace, stronger leadership, depends on how well you communicate. The most successful people aren't always the smartest or the most skilled. They're often the clearest communicators. They know how to translate their thoughts into words that move people. They can speak with clarity under pressure, listen without defensiveness, and read the subtleties between what's said and what's really meant. Good communication builds trust. It creates connection. It reduces misunderstanding and strengthens emotional bonds. It allows you to speak the truth in a way others can hear. And just as importantly, it helps you listen to understand, not just to reply. When people feel heard, respected, and understood, they open up. Whether in business or personal life, communication is the doorway to influence. Without strong communication, frustration grows. Conflict lingers. Opportunities are lost not because you weren't capable, but because you didn't convey your message clearly or confidently. On the other hand, when you speak with purpose, when your voice reflects both clarity and empathy, you become magnetic. You're seen as someone who brings value, not noise. And that perception can open doors that talent alone never could. The beauty of communication is that it's not a gift, it's a trainable skill. You can practice it, you can refine it, and as you do, every other area of your life improves with it. Relationships get stronger, work becomes smoother, your presence becomes more grounded. Because people aren't just responding to your words, they're responding to how you make them feel through your words. In a world of noise, where most people talk but rarely connect, becoming a powerful communicator sets you apart. It becomes your superpower, your competitive advantage, your foundation for success and influence. And as you master this skill, you don't just speak, you lead. You don't just listen, you connect. And you don't just express your ideas, you shape outcomes with them. That's why communication isn't just important, it's essential. It's not soft, optional, or secondary. It's foundational. Everything flows through it. And when you commit to mastering it, you gain the ability to shape your world, one word at a time. The hidden costs of poor communication. Poor communication is one of the most expensive and overlooked problems in both personal and professional life. Its effects often show up subtly at first: missed cues, unclear expectations, small misunderstandings, but over time, these small cracks widen into deep fractures that can break relationships, stall careers, destroy trust, and create unnecessary stress. While many people blame external circumstances for their setbacks, poor communication is often the silent saboteur behind it all. At work, poor communication leads to confusion, errors, and wasted time. Tasks get repeated or done incorrectly because directions weren't clear. Deadlines are missed because no one wanted to ask for clarification. Team members grow resentful or disengaged because feedback was vague or non-existent. Leaders lose credibility when they fail to articulate vision, direction, or purpose. The workplace becomes reactive, not proactive. And organizations bleed money not just through mistakes, but through lost talent, reduced morale, and lack of alignment. In relationships, poor communication leads to distance, tension, and emotional disconnection. When you don't say what you really mean or don't listen when someone else is speaking, trust erodes. Resentment builds. Arguments become cycles that repeat because the root issue was never truly addressed. People feel unheard, misunderstood, and undervalued. What begins as a single unspoken need or a poorly timed word can spiral into long-term damage, often without either person fully understanding how or why. There's also a personal cost. When you can't clearly express yourself, you feel stuck, like you're full of thoughts, ideas, or emotions you can't get out. You hesitate to speak up in meetings, stay silent in moments that require courage, or water down your truth to avoid conflict. This creates internal friction. You doubt yourself more. You lose confidence. Over time, you shrink in spaces where you should be expanding simply because your voice never fully found its place. Poor communication also costs peace of mind. Misunderstandings create anxiety. Unspoken frustrations weigh heavily. Bottled up emotions surface in passive-aggressive behavior, sarcasm, or outbursts. You replay conversations in your head, wishing you had said things differently. You dread hard conversations instead of being equipped to handle them with grace and clarity. And all the while, your sense of power over your own life diminishes, not because you aren't smart or capable, but because you haven't mastered the tool that turns thoughts into action, your words. In truth, the greatest cost of poor communication is disconnection from others and from yourself. When you can't communicate well, you struggle to align your external world with your internal truth. You end up living in reaction instead of intention. You wait for people to get you instead of learning how to reach them. You wait for clarity to magically arrive instead of creating it through clear, thoughtful expression. But the moment you commit to improving how you communicate, everything begins to shift. Misunderstandings get replaced with mutual respect. Conversations become opportunities, not landmines. Your words start working for you, not against you, and the emotional, professional, and psychological costs that once drained you begin to disappear, replaced by influence, confidence, and connection. That's why communication isn't just a soft skill, it's a core skill. And when it's weak, the cost is far more than awkward conversations. It's lost time, lost connection, lost potential. But with intention and practice, you can reverse all of it and rebuild a life where your words create clarity, not confusion, peace, not pressure, progress, not pain. What this book will help you achieve. This book is designed to help you achieve what most people only hope for: the ability to communicate with clarity, confidence, and impact in any situation. Whether you're speaking up in a meeting, navigating a difficult conversation, trying to connect more deeply with others, or simply struggling to express your thoughts clearly, this book will equip you with practical, proven techniques to transform the way you speak and listen. At its core, communication is how you bring your internal world into the external one. It's how you share ideas, build trust, resolve conflict, and influence outcomes. When your communication improves, everything else improves with it, your relationships, your confidence, your ability to lead, and your sense of control over your life. That's exactly what this book aims to unlock for you. You'll learn how to speak in a way that actually lands. No more rambling, second-guessing, or shrinking in moments that matter. Instead, you'll develop the tools to organize your thoughts, deliver your message with clarity, and adjust your tone and body language to match your intention. This is not about becoming someone else or sounding rehearsed. It's about becoming more of yourself, but with sharper edges and clearer delivery. You'll also learn how to listen, truly listen in a way that makes people feel heard, respected, and understood. So many communication breakdowns happen not because we say the wrong things, but because we don't really hear what others are trying to express. This book will help you tune in, ask better questions, and respond in ways that strengthen connection rather than create defensiveness. Another key achievement this book will help you reach is emotional control during communication. You'll learn how to stay calm and grounded even in difficult conversations, how to respond instead of react, and how to speak with assertiveness without becoming aggressive. This emotional intelligence is often the hidden superpower of great communicators, and it's something you'll be able to practice and apply immediately. This book will also help you build confidence. With each technique you learn and use, you'll start to trust your voice more. You'll walk into conversations with less fear and more presence. You'll stop avoiding the hard talks. You'll stop staying silent when you have something meaningful to contribute. Instead of hoping people understand you, you'll ensure they do, because you'll have the tools to make your message clear and compelling. This book is designed to help you build lasting habits around communication. It's not about one-time tricks. It's about rewiring how you show up every day with your family, your team, your community, and yourself. You'll walk away with scripts, strategies, and mindsets you can apply in real conversations, so your growth becomes permanent, not just inspirational. This book is a roadmap. It will take you from uncertainty to clarity, from awkwardness to confidence, from passivity to presence. You won't just talk better, you'll connect better. And that skill, the ability to express who you are and understand those around you, isn't just helpful, it's life-changing. Chapter 1. Mastering Active Listening. The difference between hearing and listening is profound, yet it's often overlooked. Hearing is passive. It's what happens when sound reaches your ears. You can hear someone talking while scrolling your phone, or daydreaming about something else entirely. It's automatic, involuntary, background noise. But true listening is active. It's a conscious choice to not only hear the words, but to receive the meaning, intention, and emotion behind them. Listening is presence. It's attention. It's respect. When you're merely hearing, you're functioning like a recorder capturing sounds without depth. The person speaking may not even feel acknowledged, because your body is present, but your mind is elsewhere. You may nod, say, uh-huh, or offer surface responses, but what's missing is connection. Listening, on the other hand, is an act of engagement. It's when you silence the inner dialogue in your head and make space to truly understand what the other person is trying to communicate beyond just words. Listening requires effort. It means tuning out distractions, not just external ones, like your phone or background noise, but internal ones, like your urge to interrupt, your assumptions, or your need to respond quickly. Good listeners hold space. They wait. They let the other person finish their thoughts without rushing to fix, judge, or shift the conversation back to themselves. They listen not to reply, but to understand. When you listen, you pick up on tone, emotion, pace, and pauses. You notice what's being said and what isn't. Someone may say, "I'm fine," but a good listener hears the tension in their voice and knows to dig deeper. Listening allows you to access the real message. just the surface script. It's how empathy is formed, how trust is built, and how misunderstandings are avoided. People can tell when they're being listened to versus when they're just being heard. There's a visible shift in their posture, tone, and energy when they realize someone is actually paying attention. They relax. They open up. They feel safe to be honest. That's because listening is validation. It sends the powerful message, "You matter enough for me to give you my full presence." And that's something everyone, in every role and relationship, needs. The impact of listening goes beyond personal interaction. It shapes leadership, conflict resolution, customer service, and negotiation. In business, a good listener can solve problems others miss, catch early signs of dissatisfaction, and understand team dynamics at a deeper level. In relationships, a good listener reduces arguments, deepens intimacy, and creates a sense of emotional safety. In contrast, poor listening where someone zones out, interrupts, or half listens leads to miscommunication, resentment, and fractured relationships. It signals disinterest. It breeds conflict. It breaks down trust. Many of the tensions people face daily at work, at home, and within themselves can be traced back to a failure to truly listen. Listening, then, is not just a skill. It's a discipline. One that requires humility, patience, and focus. But the rewards are enormous. When you commit to being a listener rather than just a hearer, you elevate your communication, your relationships, and your influence. You begin to understand before being understood. And in that, you gain something rare and powerful in today's noisy world: clarity, connection, and credibility. How to listen without interrupting or judging. Listening without interrupting or judging is one of the most powerful yet difficult communication skills to master. It requires self-awareness, restraint, and humility. In a world that moves fast and rewards quick responses, slowing down to truly hear someone without immediately inserting your opinion or evaluation can feel unnatural. But if your goal is to connect, understand, and build trust, this practice is non-negotiable. Because when people speak, they don't just want to be heard, they want to be understood without defense or dismissal. Interrupting is often a reflex. You hear something that triggers a thought or an objection, and you jump in either to clarify, correct, relate your own experience, or redirect the conversation. Sometimes it's done with good intentions. You think you're helping, showing empathy, or keeping the discussion flowing. But to the speaker, interruptions send a clear message. What I'm saying isn't as important as what you want to say. It breaks the flow. It cuts off vulnerability. It tells the other person that your agenda takes priority over their expression. Judging is just as damaging, though often more subtle. You might not say the words aloud, but if your facial expression, tone, or body language communicates skepticism, impatience, or moral superiority, the speaker will feel it. Judgment puts people on the defensive. It shuts them down. Instead of opening up, they start protecting themselves. Instead of exploring the conversation further, they retreat. And in that moment, communication breaks not because of what was said, but because of how it was received. To listen without interrupting or judging, you need to shift your intention. Don't listen to fix. Don't listen to reply. Listen to understand. Make your goal not to be right or impressive, but to be fully present. Let the speaker know through your eye contact, posture, and energy that they have your undivided attention. Let them finish their thought completely. Even if you disagree, even if you already know what you want to say, wait. Breathe. Give space. Silence isn't a gap to fill, it's a sign of respect. Train yourself to notice your internal reactions without acting on them. If you feel triggered, pause. Ask yourself, is this the right moment to challenge? Or is this the right moment to understand where they're coming from? Most conversations don't require immediate correction. What they require is patience, because if people feel safe to express themselves fully, they're more likely to open to your perspective later. You also need to release the urge to interpret everything through your own lens. One of the biggest barriers to non-judgmental listening is the habit of relating everything back to yourself. "That happened to me too," or "I would never do that." While sharing your experience can be useful in the right moment, it often cuts short someone else's process. Instead, let them stay in their story. Reflect their words. Ask thoughtful questions. Show you're tracking not just the facts, but the feelings beneath them. The truth is, when you listen without interrupting or judging, people don't just talk, they unfold. They reveal what they really mean, not just what's on the surface. And in that space, real connection is born. The conversation becomes deeper, more meaningful, more human. This kind of listening takes practice, because it's not how we've been conditioned to engage, but the more you do it, the more you'll notice the shift, not just in others, but in yourself. You'll become calmer, more grounded, more empathetic. You'll gain insight you would have missed if you rushed to speak. And you'll build relationships built on trust and respect, not because you had the right words, but because you made space for theirs. Listening without interrupting or judging isn't passive. It's a powerful form of leadership. It's an act of emotional intelligence. And it's a commitment to communication that transforms not just how people hear you, but how they experience you. Listening cues that build trust and connection. Listening cues are subtle, often nonverbal signals that tell someone, "I'm with you, I'm paying attention, you matter." These cues build trust and connection not just through what you say, but through how you respond through your eyes, posture, silence, and energy. In fact, many people will remember how attentively you listened far more than what you said, because to be truly heard is a rare experience. And when you offer that kind of presence, you immediately stand out, not as someone who talks well, but as someone who cares deeply. One of the most powerful listening cues is sustained, genuine eye contact. Not staring, not intimidating, but steady. It shows that your attention isn't drifting and that you're emotionally engaged. Breaking eye contact too often, especially when someone is sharing something important, can make them feel dismissed or judged. But when you hold eye contact naturally and consistently, you communicate that you're fully in the moment with them. Your body posture also speaks volumes. Leaning in slightly, rather than leaning back or folding your arms, suggests openness. Facing the person direct, shoulders squared, feet pointed toward them, sends a message of respect. Even subtle movements like nodding slowly as they talk show affirmation and attentiveness. These signals are often processed unconsciously by the speaker, but they leave a lasting impression. I felt seen. I felt understood. Verbal cues matter too, but less than you might think. A simple "I see," or "go on" can keep the conversation flowing, but they have to be sincere. Overuse or robotic delivery can feel fake. The key is alignment. Your voice, tone, and body language should match your intent. If someone shares something emotional and you respond with a flat or distracted "yeah," you risk invalidating their vulnerability. But a gentle, timely "that sounds tough," or "I hear you," can encourage them to keep opening up. Pausing is another cue that builds connection. Most people feel rushed or interrupted when they talk. But when you allow silence after they finish speaking, just a beat longer than usual, it tells them you're processing, not just waiting to talk. That pause gives weight to their words. It says, "I'm considering what you've said before I respond," which builds trust faster than any clever comment ever could. Mirroring their language or emotion without mimicking is also a powerful cue. If someone is sharing something exciting and you match their energy with a smile or an uplifted tone, they feel joined. If they're speaking softly about something painful and you respond with equal calmness and care, they feel safe. Emotional attunement is the heartbeat of connection, and your ability to meet people where they are makes them feel valued. Asking thoughtful, clarifying questions is another sign of deep listening. Instead of rushing to offer advice or pivot the topic, ask, "What was that like for you?" Or, "Can you tell me more about that part?" Questions like these show that you're not just listening to respond, you're listening to understand. And that level of curiosity is rare in everyday conversation. Listening cues that build trust also include what you don't do. Don't check your phone. Don't glance around the room. Don't fidget or signal impatience. Even if your words are kind, these distractions make people feel secondary. The most powerful thing you can offer someone is your undivided presence. In a world full of noise, presence is profound. When you master these listening quasi contact, body posture, verbal affirmations, emotional mirroring, reflective pauses, and curious follow-up, you become someone others feel safe with. Trusted by default, respected without demanding it. These aren't just techniques, they're relational bridges. And when you use them intentionally, you don't just hear people, you honor them. And that's how real connection is built. Not through performance, but through presence. Chapter 2. Speaking. Clearly and confidently. Organizing your thoughts before speaking is one of the most important skills you can develop if you want to be a clear, confident, and effective communicator. When your ideas are jumbled, you ramble. You over-explain, repeat yourself, or forget key points. But when your thoughts are organized, your message lands with precision and people listen. Clarity isn't just about having something to say. It's about knowing how to say it so others can truly understand and connect with it. The first step to organizing your thoughts is to pause. Even a short mental pause before you speak gives you the chance to collect yourself and focus. Too often, people rush into talking as a way to fill silence or avoid discomfort. But speaking before thinking leads to messiness. A brief moment of silence is powerful. It shows composure, and it allows your brain time to choose clarity over chaos. Next, mentally identify your main point. Ask yourself, what is the one thing I want this person to understand or walk away with? Everything else you say should support, explain, or reinforce that core message. If you don't know your main point, your words will wander. But when you're clear on your destination, your language becomes more focused and far more compelling. From there, create a quick mental structure. A simple and effective format is point, explanation, example. Start with your main idea, follow it with a brief explanation, and then offer an example or analogy that brings it to life. This sequence makes your communication easier to follow, and it gives your listener something concrete to connect with. Another tool is chunking. Break down what you want to say into smaller parts or categories. For instance, instead of dumping all your thoughts at once, think, I'll first address the problem, then the cause, and finally the solution. This kind of sequencing helps you stay on track and helps your listener absorb your message in digestible pieces. You can also use transitional phrases to guide both yourself and your audience. Phrases like, what I'm really trying to say is, here's the bottom line, or let me give you a quick example, act as mental signposts. They not only keep you focused, but they also help others stay oriented to your message. If emotions are running high, take an extra moment to breathe and calm yourself. Emotional clutter often leads to verbal clutter. When you're anxious or angry, your thoughts get scrambled. But when you're calm, you're more likely to speak with intention rather than impulse. Taking a breath isn't a delay, it's a reset that sharpens your message. Also, avoid the trap of thinking you need to say everything at once. When your thoughts are racing, you may try to cram too much into one sentence or over-explain to make sure you're understood. But clarity doesn't come from quantity, it comes from simplicity. Stick to one idea at a time. Say it clearly, then move to the next if needed. Practice helps. You don't need to script everything you say, but rehearsing how you present ideas even in everyday conversations can help train your brain to think in more organized patterns. Over time, you'll get better at forming a clear mental outline within seconds, especially when it counts. In every conversation, presentation, or difficult moment, the ability to organize your thoughts before speaking separates reactive communicators from intentional ones. It reduces misunderstanding, builds confidence, and helps your words create the kind of impact that scattered speech never can. When your thoughts are clear, your voice becomes powerful not just because it sounds good, but because it makes sense. Tone, pace, and body language that inspire respect. The way you speak, your tone, pace, and body language often communicates far more than the words you use. People form opinions about your credibility, confidence, and character in seconds based on how you present yourself, not just what you say. If you want to inspire respect in conversations, meetings, or presentations, mastering these three nonverbal elements is essential. They are the unspoken language that either amplifies your message or undermines it. Tone is the emotional color of your voice. It conveys your attitude, intention, and energy. A calm, steady tone reflects confidence and thoughtfulness. It tells people you're in control of yourself and that your words are grounded. On the other hand, a tone that is too sharp, too quiet, too rushed, or overly apologetic can make you seem unsure, defensive, or weak even if your message is strong. To earn respect, your tone should reflect both conviction and composure. Avoid speaking in a monotone, which can seem disengaged, but also beware of overexcitement, which can come across as scattered or unprofessional. Instead, aim for a tone that is intentional, that matches the weight of your message and invites others to listen. Pace is about how fast or slow you speak. Many people rush their words when they're nervous or afraid of losing someone's attention. But speaking too quickly makes it harder for others to absorb what you're saying, and it sends the message that you're not sure your words are worth hearing. Speaking too slowly, however, can seem unnatural or even condescending. The key is to find a controlled rhythm that allows your listener time to think and makes you sound self-assured. Strategic pauses are powerful. When used well, a pause after a key point can let your message sink in and draw attention to what matters. It also shows you're not afraid of silence, which is a subtle but strong display of confidence. Body language supports and enhances everything you say. The way you stand, sit, move, and gesture signals whether you believe in your message and whether others should take you seriously. Upright posture, open shoulders, and relaxed but purposeful gestures convey authority and openness. They show that you're engaged and grounded. Avoid closed-off body language, like crossed arms, slouched posture, or excessive fidgeting, which signal insecurity, discomfort, or resistance. Eye contact is one of the most powerful aspects of body language. Maintaining natural eye contact shows you're present, sincere, and confident. It builds trust and rapport. Looking down or away too often can make you seem uncertain or disconnected. However, overdoing eye contact to the point of staring can feel confrontational. The goal is balanced, steady, warm eye contact that reflects both confidence and respect. Facial expressions also matter. A neutral or engaged expression conveys focus and professionalism. A slight, genuine smile can warm up your presence and make others feel at ease, especially when paired with strong, clear communication. But forced smiles, blank stares, or mismatched expressions can create confusion or distrust. Hand gestures, when used deliberately, can emphasize your points and keep listeners visually engaged. They should feel natural, not rehearsed or distracting. Excessive or overly animated gestures can come across as nervous energy, while no movement at all can feel stiff or robotic. When tone, pace, and body language are aligned, they send a unified message. I know what I'm saying, I believe it, and I'm worth listening to. That's what inspires respect, not just in formal presentations, but in everyday conversations. People feel drawn to those who carry themselves with presence and speak with clarity. It's not about being perfect, it's about being intentional, grounded, and clear in how you express yourself. Mastering these nonverbal cues isn't about performance, it's about congruence. When your delivery matches the strength of your message, people not only hear you, they trust you. And in any setting where respect matters, that's your greatest advantage. Eliminating filler words and hesitations. Filler words and hesitations like like, I mean, and so are habits most people pick up unconsciously. While they may seem harmless, they can dramatically weaken your message, lower your perceived confidence, and make you appear unsure of what you're saying. In high-stakes situations like interviews, presentations, or serious conversations, excessive fillers can make even the most thoughtful ideas sound unpolished. Eliminating them is one of the fastest ways to sound more clear, confident, and credible. Filler words often sneak into speech when your brain is processing what to say next. They're placeholders, a way to stall while your thoughts catch up. They may seem to smooth out conversation, but what they really do is clutter it. Instead of giving you more time to think, they distract your listener and dilute your impact. Each or like chips away at your authority, signaling hesitation even when you know exactly what you mean. The first step in eliminating filler words is awareness. Most people don't realize how often they use them until they hear themselves speak. Try recording a few minutes of your own conversation or presentation. Then listen carefully not to the content, but to the rhythm and tone. Count how many times you use fillers. Pay attention to when they appear. Is it at the start of sentences? In between ideas? After a tough question, identifying your personal patterns is key to changing them. Once you're aware, the next step is to embrace the power of silence. Most people use filler words to avoid dead air, but silence is not the enemy, it's a tool. A well-timed pause signals thoughtfulness. It gives you space to breathe, to think, and to choose your next words with care. Silence commands attention in a way filler words never can. When you pause instead of saying, you create clarity. You sound more composed. And you give your audience the mental space to digest what you've just said. Another effective technique is to slow down. Many filler words come from talking too fast. When you rush, your mouth gets ahead of your mind, and your instinct is to fill the gap. By slowing your pace, you reduce the need to fill space. You allow your thoughts to form more completely before you speak, and your words will feel more deliberate and confident. Practice is essential. Rehearse key messages or presentations out loud, focusing on clean, filler-free delivery. If you catch yourself about to use a filler, pause, reset, and keep going. Over time, your brain will begin to build new pathways, choosing silence or purposeful language instead of old habits. Another helpful exercise is to replace fillers with anchor words or transitional phrases. Instead of, say, let me think about that, or here's what I mean. These intentional phrases help maintain flow while still buying you time to think. They keep the audience engaged without signaling uncertainty. You can also improve your fluency by strengthening your vocabulary and structuring your thoughts more clearly. The more confident you are in the language you're using, and the more organized your ideas are, the less likely you'll reach for filler crutches. Preparation reduces hesitation. Be patient with yourself. Eliminating filler words isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Even professional speakers use them occasionally. What matters is reducing their frequency and building greater awareness around your speech. As you do, you'll notice a transformation not just in how others perceive you, but in how you perceive yourself. When your words become sharper, cleaner, and more intentional, your message carries more weight. You sound like someone who thinks before they speak, someone who values precision, someone who deserves to be heard. And that kind of presence free from clutter is what makes your voice truly powerful. Chapter 3. Reading the room and responding effectively. Understanding verbal and nonverbal signals is essential for effective communication because words alone rarely convey the full message. In fact, much of what people truly mean is expressed not through what they say, but through how they say it and what their body does while speaking. Verbal communication, your words, tone, and phrasing gives the surface-level meaning. Nonverbal communication, facial expressions, body posture, gestures, eye contact, and even silence reveals the emotional truth underneath. To become a powerful communicator, you must learn to read and respond to both. Verbal signals involve the choice of words, the tone in which they're delivered, the speed, volume, and clarity of speech. For instance, someone saying, "I'm fine," in a flat or curt tone doesn't truly mean they're fine. The words say one thing, but the tone contradicts it. Misreading verbal tone is one of the most common causes of misunderstanding. A sarcastic remark can be taken seriously, a genuine compliment can sound insincere, and a neutral statement can come across as cold. That's why learning to notice inflections, emotional energy, and pacing is so critical. Verbal signals also include how someone speaks, not just what they say. Do they pause frequently? Are they choosing their words carefully, or are they speaking impulsively? Do they repeat themselves, or avoid certain topics? These patterns offer clues about the speaker's comfort level, confidence, and intention. Paying attention to these verbal rhythms helps you hear not just the message, but the meaning behind the message. On the other hand, nonverbal signals often speak louder than words. Facial expressions, for example, are powerful indicators of emotion. A furrowed brow, clenched jaw, or forced smile can all betray tension, annoyance, or discomfort regardless of what someone is saying. When you notice someone's face tighten while they nod in agreement, that's a signal of inner conflict. When their eyes light up during a story, that's genuine excitement. These cues help you tune into what matters most to the speaker. Posture and body orientation also reveal a great deal. Someone leaning in suggests engagement or interest, while someone crossing their arms, looking away, or turning their body slightly can indicate defensiveness or disinterest. Hand gestures can reinforce or contradict spoken words. For instance, if someone is saying, "I'm open to feedback," but their hands are balled into fists or hidden, their nonverbal cues suggest otherwise. Eye contact is another major nonverbal signal. Consistent eye contact shows attentiveness, honesty, and confidence. Avoiding eye contact may indicate discomfort, guilt, or disengagement. But too much eye contact can feel aggressive. The key is to strike a balance that feels natural and respectful. Even silence is a nonverbal signal. Sometimes people pause before answering not because they're unsure but because they're thinking carefully. Others go quiet in moments of tension or overwhelm. Recognizing when silence is meaningful rather than rushing to fill it can be one of the most respectful and powerful communication skills you possess. Environmental and cultural factors also shape how verbal and nonverbal signals are interpreted. What's considered respectful eye contact or appropriate personal space in one culture might feel uncomfortable or offensive in another. Skilled communicators remain sensitive to these dynamics, adjusting their behavior to suit the context and the person they're engaging with. Mastering the interpretation of both verbal and nonverbal signals doesn't mean becoming hyper-analytical. It means being attuned. It means listening with your ears, eyes, and intuition so that you can respond with accuracy, empathy, and clarity. When you respond not just to words, but to emotions and signals, you validate the speaker's full experience. You show that you're not just hearing them, you're understanding them. This level of awareness builds trust, deepens relationships, and eliminates unnecessary confusion. It helps you resolve conflicts faster, offer better support, and influence with greater effectiveness. In any setting, personal, professional, or public, your ability to read the room and respond accordingly is what transforms conversation into connection. And that's the true art of communication. Adapting your communication style to fit the audience. Adapting your communication style to fit your audience is not about changing who you are or being inauthentic, it's about being effective. It's about understanding that different people hear, process, and respond to messages in different ways, and the more skillfully you tailor your delivery, the more likely your message will be understood, respected, and acted upon. Communication is never one size fits all. What works in a boardroom may fall flat in a casual conversation. What inspires a creative team might confuse a data-driven executive. The key is knowing how to read the room and respond with intention, not assumption. To begin adapting your style, you first need to assess who you're speaking to. Is your audience formal or informal? Are they experts on the topic or beginners? Are they motivated by facts or by emotions and values? The more you know about their expectations, pain points, and preferences, the better you can frame your message to meet them where they are. This doesn't require psychic ability, it just requires listening, observing, and asking the right questions. For example, if you're speaking to an analytical, detail-oriented audience, you'll want to present information with clarity, structure, and data to support your points. Avoid vague language or emotional appeals that lack evidence. Instead, break your message into logical parts, define your terms, and get straight to the point. Respect their need for precision. Conversely, if your audience is more relational or emotionally driven, they'll respond better to stories, tone, and human connection. Rather than leading with statistics, lead with real-life impact or shared values. Use inclusive language like we and us, and focus on how the message makes them feel, not just what it tells them. Another aspect to consider is formality. The tone you use when emailing a potential employer should be different from how you speak to a close friend. Adapting doesn't mean being stiff or overly casual. It means finding the right level of respect, familiarity, and professionalism for the context. Slang, emojis, or humor might be welcome in one setting and wildly inappropriate in another. Your body language and delivery should also adjust. With a large group, your gestures may need to be bigger, your tone more projected. With one person in a quiet room, a more relaxed, conversational tone works best. In virtual settings, where body language is limited, tone and pacing become even more important because people are picking up on subtler cues to gauge your intent and clarity. Cultural differences play a huge role too. What's considered assertive in one culture might be seen as rude in another. Eye contact, hand gestures, personal space, these all vary across backgrounds. Being culturally aware means slowing down and observing. It means asking rather than assuming. It means being willing to adjust for the sake of connection, not dominance. Adapting also means knowing how much to say. Some people want the big picture. Others want the details. Some prefer direct language. Others prefer softened, indirect phrasing. A good communicator knows when to expand and when to simplify, when to push forward and when to pause. This skill of dynamic adjustment makes your communication feel like a two-way experience, not a lecture, but a relationship. Importantly, adapting doesn't mean being manipulative or fake. The goal is to align your message with the audience's ability to receive it. You're still being authentic, but you're being strategic about how your authenticity is expressed. Think of it like music. The same melody can be played on a piano, a guitar, or a violin. The song remains true, but the instrument changes based on the audience and the environment. When you adapt your communication style, you build rapport. You demonstrate respect. You reduce misunderstanding and increase influence. People feel like you get the command that makes them far more likely to listen, trust, and respond. Adaptability in communication is not a compromise of your message. It's a multiplier of its impact. It turns passive listeners into engaged participants. And in any conversation that matters, that's what makes the difference. When to speak, when to pause, and when to let silence work. Knowing when to speak, when to pause, and when to let silence work is one of the most overlooked but powerful elements of communication. Mastering this timing creates presence, builds trust, and gives your words greater weight. It's not just about what you say, it's about when and how long you let space exist around it. Most people fill silence out of discomfort, afraid it will make them look unprepared, uncertain, or awkward. But in reality, strategic pauses and intentional silence often make you appear more thoughtful, confident, and in control. Speaking at the right moment begins with reading the room, understanding the energy, the context, and the emotional state of the people involved. If tension is high, speaking immediately can escalate things. If people are confused or overwhelmed, rushing into explanation can create more noise. The best communicators don't speak to fill the air, they speak to serve the moment. That means taking a beat to assess. Is this the time to offer insight? Or is this the time to hold space? Pauses are invaluable. A pause before you speak signals that you are choosing your words with care. It also captures attention because silence before sound naturally draws people in. A pause after you make a key point gives it room to land. It allows your listener time to process what you said, rather than moving on too quickly and losing the impact. In both cases, pausing acts as punctuation in your communication. It adds rhythm, clarity, and power. There's also the pause in the middle of a sentence, which can help you emphasize a critical word or phrase. For example, what we really need is alignment. That slight pause invites the listener to lean in. It turns your speech from a stream of words into a performance of meaning. But even more powerful than the pause is the full use of silence, the deliberate choice not to speak at all. Silence, when used intentionally, communicates far more than words can. In a disagreement, silence can signal strength, emotional control, or an invitation for the other person to reflect. In a presentation, silence can build anticipation or reinforce authority. In a moment of shared emotion, silence can be an act of empathy, holding space for what's being felt without trying to fix it. Letting silence work also means resisting the urge to immediately respond or fill in someone else's pause. When someone is speaking and they go quiet, many people rush to jump in. But often, they're just gathering their thoughts or processing something vulnerable. Giving them time to finish without interruption shows deep respect and trust. In negotiation or persuasive communication, silence can be a strategic tool. After making a clear offer or point, resist the urge to explain or over-justify. Let your words hang. The silence puts gentle pressure on the listener to respond and, often leads them to reveal more than they planned. This is known as the power of the pause, and it's often what distinguishes seasoned professionals from inexperienced speakers. However, silence must be used with care. Prolonged or poorly timed silence can be misinterpreted as disapproval, confusion, or disengagement. The key is being present enough to use it intentionally, not passively. When your silence is paired with open body language, eye contact, and emotional presence, it becomes a bridge, not a barrier. Mastering when to speak, pause, or remain silent turns your communication into a dance rather than a monologue. It creates space for meaning, for trust, and for deeper understanding. In a world of noise, silence is a signal. It says, "I'm not just reacting, I'm responding with care." And that simple difference is what gives your words and your presence real power. Chapter 4. Asking powerful questions. Mastering the art of asking open-ended versus closed questions is one of the most effective ways to deepen conversations, build trust, and improve communication. Questions are more than tools for gathering information, they are invitations. Depending on how you ask them, you either open the door to deeper dialogue or shut it with a yes or no answer. Knowing when and how to use each type of question gives you the power to guide conversations with purpose and clarity. Closed questions are straightforward and specific. They can be answered with a simple yes, no, or a short factual response. Examples include, "Did you finish the report? Are you feeling okay? Have you been here before?" Closed questions are useful when you need quick, direct answers or when time is limited. They're especially helpful for confirming details, narrowing down options, or beginning a conversation in a non-threatening way. In interviews, customer service, or situations that require accuracy and brevity, closed questions help get straight to the point. But if used too frequently or without care, they can unintentionally shut down deeper dialogue. The person answering may feel interrogated or boxed in, with little room to express themselves. That's where open-ended questions come in. These are designed to invite thought, feeling, elaboration, and insight. They start with words like how, what, why, or tell me about. Examples include, "What made you decide to approach it that way? How did that experience affect you? What do you think would help most right now?" Open-ended questions encourage reflection and storytelling. They show curiosity, empathy, and a willingness to listen. When you ask someone, "What's been on your mind lately?" instead of, "Are you okay?" you invite them into a space where they feel safe to share. Open-ended questions demonstrate that you're not just interested in facts, you're interested in them. But the power of these two question types isn't in using one exclusively, it's in using them intentionally. Start with a closed question to gather basic information, then follow with an open-ended one to go deeper. For instance, in a meeting. Closed. "Did you hit your target this month?" Open-ended. "What challenges did you face along the way?" This rhythm allows you to stay efficient while still making space for context, emotion, and insight. It also shows that you value not just performance, but perspective. Another benefit of open-ended questions is that they shift the power dynamic. Instead of you doing all the talking or directing the conversation, you give the other person agency. They get to decide how much to share and which direction to take. This kind of space builds trust, especially in coaching, leadership, relationships, and conflict resolution. That said, there are moments where a closed question is not only appropriate but necessary. When clarity or accountability is the goal, a direct question cuts through ambiguity. In emergencies, for example, you don't want reflection, you want yes or no. In legal, medical, or safety-related settings, precision matters. The real art lies in knowing your intent. Do you want to open a conversation or close a decision? Are you seeking understanding or confirmation? Do you want to give space or move forward? Once you're clear on that, you can choose your question type with purpose. Skilled communicators don't just ask questions, they design them. They consider the tone, the timing, and the impact. They understand that questions shape how people think, feel, and respond. And by mastering both open-ended and closed questions, they don't just get better answers, they build better relationships. Every meaningful exchange begins with a good question, and every good question begins with the artful choice of open or closed. When you use that choice with care, you turn conversation into connection, and connection into lasting influence. How to use questions to build rapport and influence. Using questions to build rapport and influence is one of the most effective communication tools you can master. At their core, questions are not just for extracting information, they're for opening doors, inviting trust, and shaping the emotional tone of a conversation. When used with skill and intention, questions show that you're not just talking at someone, you're engaging with them. You're curious about their thoughts, feelings, and experiences, and that kind of attention naturally creates connection. The foundation of building rapport through questions starts with your mindset. You must be genuinely curious, not manipulative or transactional. People can sense when you're asking questions just to steer a conversation or appear interested. But when your intent is authentic, your questions carry warmth. They make the other person feel seen and valued. That emotional validation is the seed of rapport. Start with safe, non-invasive questions that allow the other person to relax. These could be about their work, hobbies, opinions, or past experiences. Simple but thoughtful questions like, "What do you enjoy most about your work?" or "How did you get started in this field?" give the other person a chance to open up without pressure. These types of questions show respect for their story, and most people want to share when they feel it's welcomed. As rapport builds, your questions can gently deepen. This is where influence begins. Asking, "What challenges are you currently facing?" Or, "What would success look like for you?" Invite someone to reflect. These kinds of questions give you insight into what matters to them. And when you understand someone's motivations, goals, and struggles, you gain a powerful advantage, not to manipulate, but to serve or guide more effectively. When you echo their language in your follow-up questions, you reinforce that you're truly listening. If someone says, "I've been really overwhelmed with managing my team," you might respond, "What part of team management has been most overwhelming lately?" That mirroring builds trust and makes the person feel deeply understood. It also positions you as a thoughtful communicator, not someone rushing to respond, but someone who stays with the moment. Influence also grows when your questions help someone clarify their own thinking. Sometimes, the right question sparks a breakthrough better than any advice could. For example, "What's really holding you back from making that decision?" Or, "What would change if you gave yourself full permission to go for it?" These questions don't just inform you, they empower the person answering. You become the catalyst for insight, not just the recipient of information. In leadership or persuasive settings, questions are more powerful than statements. Instead of saying, "You should try it this way," ask, "Have you considered approaching it from this angle?" The second approach creates collaboration. It invites ownership. People are more likely to act on ideas they arrive at themselves, and your questions can guide them to that conclusion. Tone and body language matter just as much as the content of your question. Ask with openness, not judgment. Avoid rapid-fire questioning that feels like an interrogation. Pause after you ask, and truly listen. Let silence do some of the heavy lifting. When people feel safe to speak, they reveal more. And when they feel heard, they become more receptive to your influence. The questions you ask shape the emotional space between you and others. Used with care, they build connection, earn trust, and guide conversations in meaningful directions. Whether you're leading a team, coaching someone, negotiating a deal, or simply having a heart-to-heart, the right question at the right time can open minds, shift perspectives, and unlock action. In a world full of people eager to talk, it's the person who knows how to really ask that holds the true power to connect and influence. Turning conflict into clarity through inquiry. Turning conflict into clarity through inquiry is one of the most powerful communication skills a person can develop. Conflict is often seen as something to avoid an uncomfortable, emotional standoff where someone wins and someone loses. But in truth, conflict is simply misalignment of expectations, emotions, values, or communication. When approached with curiosity instead of defensiveness, conflict becomes a doorway to understanding. And the key to opening that door is asking the right questions. Most people enter conflict ready to defend, explain, or attack. They raise their voice, talk over the other person, or withdraw completely. But real resolution doesn't come from pushing your point harder. It comes from pausing, stepping back, and asking, what's really going on here? This shift from reaction to inquiry instantly diffuses tension. It signals that you're not here to fight, you're here to understand. The first step is to get genuinely curious about the other person's experience. What are they feeling? What are they trying to protect or express that maybe they can't say clearly? Instead of saying, you're overreacting, ask, can you help me understand what this feels like from your side? That one question opens space for emotional honesty. It shows respect, even in disagreement. And often, the act of being asked, not judged, softens the other person's defensiveness. Another powerful question is, what outcome are you hoping for right now? This moves the conversation from blame to intention. Instead of getting stuck in the past, who said, what, who did what, you focus on forward movement. You invite collaboration. Even asking, what would help you feel heard or understood right now, can instantly de-escalate a tense moment. It gives power back to the person who feels wounded or overlooked. It's also essential to ask yourself questions during conflict. Why am I reacting this way? What am I really trying to protect? When you pause to get curious about your own emotions, you create internal clarity that prevents unnecessary escalation. This self-inquiry also makes your next response more thoughtful and far less reactive. Sometimes, conflict surfaces long-held assumptions or misunderstandings. Instead of assuming the worst, ask clarifying questions. When you said that, what did you mean? Is it possible we're interpreting this situation differently? Was there something I missed that mattered to you? These types of questions don't invalidate your own experience. They expand the conversation. They signal that you're not just trying to win, you're trying to understand the full picture. Even when someone is angry or emotional, questions like, what's the most important thing you want me to hear right now? Or, what would resolution look like to you? Show maturity and leadership. You're not pouring fuel on the fire, you're redirecting the energy into something constructive. Importantly, your tone and body language must match your intention. A calm voice, open posture, and steady eye contact create a space where questions feel safe, not manipulative. If your questions are laced with sarcasm, impatience, or condescension, they lose their power. True inquiry feels open, humble, and grounded. When you ask the right questions during conflict, something remarkable happens. Clarity begins to surface. Assumptions dissolve. Emotions untangle. Motives become clearer. What seemed like personal attacks often turn out to be fear, hurt, or unmet needs. And once those needs are named, they can be addressed. Turning conflict into clarity through inquiry doesn't mean avoiding hard truths or pretending everything's fine. It means choosing curiosity over combat. It means creating conversations that bring understanding instead of division. And it means believing that even in disagreement, people want to be seen, heard, and understood. The question is not, how do I win this argument? But rather, how can we both walk away with a better understanding? When that becomes your goal, conflict stops being a battlefield and becomes a bridge. Chapter 5. Giving and receiving feedback gracefully. Delivering constructive criticism without creating defensiveness is both an art and a discipline. While most people want to be helpful, the way feedback is delivered often determines whether it inspires improvement or triggers resistance. The key is not just in what you say, but how and when you say it. Constructive criticism, when handled with emotional intelligence, can build trust, deepen relationships, and fuel growth. But when poorly delivered, it can damage confidence, create resentment, and shut down communication. The first step in giving constructive feedback is to check your intention. Are you trying to help the other person grow? Are you venting frustration? Feedback given from a place of irritation or ego will almost always provoke defensiveness, no matter how valid the points may be. But if your tone, posture, and words show that your goal is support, not attack, you're far more likely to be heard and respected. Timing matters. Deliver feedback when emotions are calm and the person is in a state to receive it. Public settings or high-pressure moments often backfire. Instead, choose a private, neutral environment where the person can feel safe and not embarrassed. Starting with the right atmosphere shows respect and sets the stage for open conversation. Next, focus on the behavior, not the person. One of the fastest ways to trigger defensiveness is to make it personal. Saying, "You're careless with details," attacks identity. Instead, say, "I noticed a few data points were missing in the report." That keeps the feedback objective and actionable. Frame your observations around specific facts, not generalizations or assumptions. Avoid words like always or never, which often feel exaggerated and unfair. Another key is to use I statements rather than you accusations. For example, instead of "you didn't communicate clearly," try, "I felt confused about the next steps after our meeting." Instead of "you make things complicated," try, "I think the process might be clearer if we simplified a few steps." I statements take ownership of your experience and reduce the chance that the other person will feel blamed. They also create room for mutual understanding rather than defensiveness. A great technique is the feedback sandwich. Begin with a sincere positive, follow with the area for improvement, and close with encouragement or a reminder of your trust in their potential. For example, "I really appreciate how much effort you put into this project. One thing I'd suggest is double-checking the formatting before submission. It was a little hard to read. But overall, I know your work is strong, and I'm confident this will improve with just a small tweak." Be careful, though the sandwich method must be authentic. If the praise feels forced or the criticism is sugar-coated too much, it loses impact. The goal isn't to disguise feedback, it's to deliver it in a way that keeps the relationship intact and the focus on growth. Tone is everything. A calm, kind, and steady voice communicates that your feedback is safe and well-intentioned. Smiling gently, nodding as you speak, and keeping an open posture also helps soften the delivery. Even pausing to ask, "Is this a good time to share some thoughts?" gives the other person agency and shows respect for their emotional space. It also helps to ask questions that invite collaboration. "Would it help if we reviewed this together next time? What support would make this easier going forward? How do you feel about the feedback? Is there anything I'm missing from your side?" These questions transform feedback from a lecture into a dialogue. They give the other person a chance to express their perspective, clear up misunderstandings, and feel involved in the solution. Always end with affirmation. Reinforce your belief in the person's ability, their value to the team or relationship, and your commitment to their growth. This is what turns criticism into encouragement. It tells them, I see your potential and I'm invested in helping you succeed. Constructive criticism, when offered with empathy and clarity, isn't criticism at all. It's a gift. It's a mirror that shows people not what's wrong with them, but what's possible for them. And when you deliver it with care, you don't just correct behavior, you build trust, sharpen communication, and strengthen every relationship it touches. Receiving feedback without ego. Receiving feedback without ego is one of the most transformative skills you can develop, yet it's also one of the hardest. Why? Because feedback, even when well-intentioned, often feels personal. It can sting. It can trigger our defenses, challenge our self-image, or expose areas we'd rather not face. The ego, whose job is to protect our identity, often interprets feedback as a threat. But when you learn to put ego aside and embrace feedback with openness, you unlock an accelerated path to personal and professional growth. The first step to receiving feedback without ego is to shift your mindset. Instead of viewing feedback as criticism, view it as information. It's not a verdict on your worth, it's data. And data, when processed with maturity, leads to better decisions and outcomes. Not all feedback is accurate, but almost all feedback is useful. Even biased or poorly delivered feedback can teach you something about how others perceive you, about your communication style, or about blind spots you didn't know existed. A practical way to reduce ego's grip is to listen actively rather than defensively. That means resisting the urge to interrupt, justify, or mentally prepare your rebuttal while the other person is speaking. Instead, lean in, make eye contact, nod if appropriate. Take a breath and truly listen to what is being said, not just to the words, but to the intention behind them. Often, people giving feedback are nervous too. Meeting their vulnerability with composure creates a safe space for honest dialogue. It's helpful to separate identity from behavior. Your actions, choices, or habits can be criticized without it meaning you are bad, lazy, or incompetent. For example, someone pointing out that you missed a deadline doesn't mean you're unreliable. It means that in that instance, something didn't go as planned. Receiving that feedback with curiosity rather than shame allows you to improve without internalizing unnecessary guilt. When you feel your ego getting triggered, tight chest, defensive thoughts, emotional reactions, pause. Name what's happening. You might think, I feel attacked, or I want to explain myself. Acknowledge the emotion without letting it take over. A simple mental reframe like, this is growth, not judgment, can help ground you. Remember, your goal is not to protect your image, it's to get better. Asking clarifying questions also demonstrates maturity and openness. For example, can you give me an example of what you mean? How do you think I could improve in that area? Is this something you've noticed before? These types of questions keep the conversation constructive. They signal that you're not shutting down, you're engaging. You're interested in learning, not just hearing. It's also okay to take a moment if the feedback hits a nerve. You can say, I really appreciate you sharing that. I need a little time to process it. That's not weakness, it's wisdom. It shows that you're taking the feedback seriously, rather than reacting impulsively. Another way to reduce ego is to look for patterns in the feedback you receive. If multiple people mention the same concern over time, it's likely a real issue worth addressing. Instead of resisting it, thank them for holding up a mirror. Growth begins when you stop arguing with the reflection. Most importantly, express gratitude. Even if the feedback was tough to hear, even if you disagree with parts of it, thank the person for being willing to share. Feedback is uncomfortable for the giver too. By receiving it graciously, you encourage more honest communication in the future and build stronger, more trusting relationships. Over time, the more you practice receiving feedback without ego, the stronger and more secure you become. You learn that your value isn't diminished by imperfection, it's proven by your willingness to evolve. You realize that feedback is not a threat to your identity but a tool for your growth. And with that shift, you stop fearing feedback and start welcoming it. That's when real transformation begins. Creating communication loops that encourage growth. Creating communication loops that encourage growth means building an ongoing, open-ended cycle of dialogue where feedback, reflection, and progress continuously fuel one another. Rather than having one-off conversations that end as soon as the words stop, growth-centered communication loops keep ideas alive, relationships deepening, and learning moving forward. These loops don't just happen, they're intentionally designed, and they require trust, humility, and a shared commitment to getting better together. At the heart of a communication loop is ongoing engagement. That means you're not just delivering a message, you're creating a rhythm of check-ins, follow-ups, and honest exchanges that build on each other. For example, after offering feedback or guidance, instead of closing the conversation with, "Let me know if you need anything," a communication loop continues with, "Let's revisit this next week. I'd love to hear how things are evolving." This simple shift turns a single moment into a growth process. These loops work best when the dynamic is two-way, not top-down. Whether you're a leader, colleague, teacher, or friend, your goal is not just to give insight, but to receive it as well. When someone offers their thoughts, ideas, or concerns, make sure they know you're truly listening. Acknowledge what they say. Reflect it back. Then build on it with further questions like, "What would support look like for you right now?" Or, "How can we keep improving this together?" Clarity is a vital component. Growth dies in vague communication. To encourage progress, make your expectations and intentions as specific as possible. "Here's what success looks like to me. What does it look like to you?" Or, "What measurable result should we aim for, and how often should we revisit this?" Defining these elements ensures that both sides are aligned and that future conversations have a clear reference point. A strong communication loop also values accountability, but not in a punitive way. It's about creating follow-through. If you agree on a course of action, schedule time to revisit it. If you suggest an improvement, ask, "Can we touch base on this next Thursday to see how it's going?" This keeps momentum alive and shows that growth matters, not just in theory but in practice. One of the most powerful features of a communication loop is the emotional safety it builds. When people know they won't be judged for evolving, experimenting, or even failing, they become more willing to take risks and share honestly. You create this safety by being consistent in your tone, predictable in your reactions, and respectful in your approach. Say things like, "This is a learning process, and I appreciate your effort," or "We're in this together, let's figure it out as a team." To reinforce the loop, express gratitude and celebrate progressive and small wins. A comment like, "I noticed you've really taken the initiative lately," or "Your communication in that last meeting was much clearer, great job," helps build confidence and reinforces the behavior you want to see more of. Growth is most sustainable when it feels acknowledged and appreciated. You can also encourage others to create loops with you. Invite feedback regularly by asking, "Is there anything I could be doing better to support you?" Or, "Have you noticed anything I might be missing?" These questions model humility and make growth a mutual expectation, not a top-down command. When feedback flows both ways, everyone benefits. Technology can help maintain communication loops, too. Use shared documents, progress trackers, or recurring check-in reminders to ensure nothing gets lost or forgotten. But tools are only as effective as the intention behind them. What matters most is that people feel heard, supported, and seen as active participants in the journey. In essence, Creating communication loops is about moving from momentary advice to lasting impact. It's about shifting from isolated feedback to sustained development. These loops build trust, reinforce consistency, and nurture the mindset that we're all always learning. In a fast-moving world, conversations come and go, but communication loops, they keep growing long after the words are spoken because they're rooted in purpose and powered by connection. Communication is a daily practice, not a talent. Communication is often mistaken for a natural talent, something you either have or don't. But the truth is, effective communication is not a gift. It's a practice. It's built day by day through conscious effort, honest reflection, and intentional repetition. Like any other skill, whether it's playing an instrument, learning a language, or training for a sport, communication improves with use, feedback, and commitment. And when approached this way, it becomes a powerful force for personal and professional growth. Many people assume that great communicators are simply born charismatic or extroverted. But being a good communicator has far less to do with personality and far more to do with discipline. It's about choosing your words thoughtfully, listening fully, observing others, and showing up with presence every single day. It's not about dazzling people with your speaking ability. It's about connecting with people in a way that makes them feel seen, heard, and understood. Daily communication happens in the small, seemingly mundane moments. How you greet someone in the morning, how you respond to feedback, how you ask for help, how you navigate difficult conversations. These moments, repeated over time, form the foundation of trust, credibility, and influence. The way you communicate when things are calm shapes how people hear you when things get hard. Because it's a daily practice, communication is inherently imperfect. You'll say the wrong thing. You'll speak too quickly or too harshly. You'll interrupt without meaning to, or miss the emotional cue in someone else's body language. But mistakes don't mean you're bad at communicating. They mean you're human. The point isn't perfection, it's progress. Each moment of miscommunication is an opportunity to learn. What did I miss? What could I say differently next time? What did this teach me about listening? Treating communication as a practice means you become intentional with your presence. Before entering a conversation, you ask, what's the goal here? What's the emotional temperature? How can I be fully present rather than distracted or reactive? It means you become aware of your tone, your word choices, your timing, your facial expressions. And it means you pay attention to how people respond, not just to your words, but to the energy behind them. It also means practicing empathy. Great communicators don't just express their own thoughts, they tune into the experience of others. They learn to ask better questions, to validate without fixing, to pause instead of rushing to fill silence. This kind of communication rooted in care and curiosity takes effort. And that effort has to be renewed daily. One of the greatest shifts you can make is to stop waiting until you feel like communicating well. Don't reserve your best skills for important meetings or public speaking. Practice them in the everyday. Practice in texts, in hallway chats, in family dinners. The way you say thank you, the way you apologize, the way you share praise or address a conflict, all of it adds up. All of it counts. Just like brushing your teeth or stretching your body, communication is hygiene for your relationships. It keeps things clean, clear, and healthy. And when neglected, small misunderstandings become big problems. Trust erodes, connection weakens. But when practiced regularly with intention and humility, communication becomes a habit that strengthens everything you touch. Communication is not something you master once and for all. It evolves with every new person, every new challenge, every new context. And that's what makes it a practice, not a performance. You don't need to be perfect to be effective. You need to be present. You need to be willing. You need to keep showing up. So speak with purpose. Listen with heart. And remember, every word is a chance to build, repair, or uplift. That's not talent. That's a choice one you make. One conversation at a time.